I'm pleased to welcome today Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts. Senator Markey has fought throughout his career to break down barriers to equal opportunity for all persons with disability. Among his many accomplishments, in 2010, he introduced the 21st Century Communications and Video and Accessibility Act, which was signed into law by President Obama. Senator, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Great to be with you, my friend.
So let me ask you my first question, which is, why is it important for people with disabilities to go vote?
Well, because justice is on the ballot, including disability rights. We want to continue to break down barriers. We want to continue to make sure that we level the playing field. And the only way to do it is by voting. You have to vote for people who are going to be advancing that agenda, fighting for real change. Like you're saying, when Barack Obama signed my bill in 2010, it ensured that every wireless device, every iPhone, every iPad was 100% accessible to the deaf and blind community. But it took that long, all the way up until 2010, in order to accomplish something like that. And it took advocates like me who cared about it to be able to say to the electronics industry, for example, no, we have to do this. We have to make all these technologies 100% accessible. And that's just a good example of how picking the right political leaders then leads to a change in the laws, which then means that there's a change in the lives of everyone. And the disabilities community is right there, front and center, and they need to vote and vote in big numbers this year. So the message is sent that they want all barriers broken down.
What do you see the biggest voting barriers for people with disabilities?
Making sure that that you have given yourself enough time to vote, because sometimes there might be issues about access, and you have to give yourself the time to plan to do it, and to do it in a way that allows for that extra time if necessary. To vote absentee, to make sure that if you need to, that you get the ballot early enough so that you can vote. And then if you are there, making sure that you have in anticipation that you might be in a long line, that you have to make sure that the text that you're reading is something that you are able to deal with as you're there in the voting booth, making sure that the voting machine is not too complicated to operate, that you get help in order to be able to vote properly. So I think that, you know, if people do a little bit of work in anticipation of going to vote, that it should be something that is easy to navigate, as long as a little bit of anticipatory thought has been put into it.
Yeah, and I think when I went to go vote, people there were very understanding. You know, I said I brought my wife with me, and I actually called her my voting buddy. I should have said this is my voting buddy and my wife, but you know, they were very understanding, very accommodating, and people needn't be afraid of asking for accommodations when they go vote, and people there should be very understanding about that. What bright spots in the voting rights movement are you excited about?
Well, I think that there are just so many movements out there right now. Stacey Abrams down in Georgia has an incredibly impressive voter education program that she's leading.
I just interviewed her actually a while back ago.
Yeah, she's great, and I love her program. And there's just so many other programs like that that are out there, and I've never seen in my life this much attention paid to voter education. It's absolutely inspiring to see what is happening in the country. And then we can see on television every night the long lines, you know, all across the country, which I think is a reflection of this incredible activating fluid that has been put onto the this election cycle. and all the work that's being done by people like Stacey Abrams, but so many others all across our country.
I feel that the long lines are statements that people feel like they understand now how to, not that they didn't understand before, but I feel like everybody is in the same boat, and everybody is starting to realize that, and the only way to change it is to go vote.
I agree with you. This is going to be, I think, a record-breaking year for voting, and we want to make sure that everyone with a disability is part of that, and we want to help as much as we can to make sure everyone gets out there and have their voice be cast.
Speaking of which, what is your voting plan, and why is it important to have a plan?
Well, I voted about 10 days ago. I live in Malden, Massachusetts. That's where I am right now in my house. And I went to downtown Malden. I had my ballot. I had filled it out, and I just put it right into the voting box there in downtown Malden. And I urge everyone, especially since it's getting so late, to vote in person. We don't know if votes that are cast by mail now will be counted. So the closer we get to the election is the better off, and the more likely that the vote will be counted if you go down in person. Your father, of course, was the embodiment of all the best of Massachusetts, all the best of Boston, and just such an incredible guy who, by the way, using his power, to protect the press, to protect democracy, was a perfect example of why elections are important.
How do you think historians will look at this?
I think history will record that this was the year that people stood up to say we have to end racial injustice in our country. History will record this was the year that people stood up and said no more in terms of climate change, that we need a Green New Deal. I think this is the year history will record that people said we can see through coronavirus, we can see through George Floyd, that this is now the time we have to deal with criminal justice reform in our country. I think history will record that it is now clear that everyone is entitled to health care. It shouldn't just be selective, it should be universal, and that we have to do something about it. I think history will record that this was a year where justice was on the ballot, and that justice was served, that the people voted for it, and then beginning in 2021, that politics in Washington changed once and for all towards making sure that everyone is entitled to and is given every protection under the United States Constitution, including the disability community.
Senator, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.